you know that Elvis Presley got drafted into the US military on this day in 1958 at the height of his fame? Like, can you imagine if Harry Styles got called into the military and had to take 2 years out to do national service? So, like, what the hell? Well, at the time, every male between the ages of 18 and 25 in the USA was eligible to be drafted for military service. So when Presley got the call up at the age of 23, he couldn't exactly say no without looking like an anti-American wimp. He was naturally very concerned about his career being put on hold for 2 years. His management told him that they were going to try and cut a deal so that he could entertain the troops, but they had no intention of doing this for a number of reasons. Firstly, the performances would be unpaid because he'd be on national service, and secondly, the military would record the performances and then they would have the right to broadcast them wherever and whenever they liked because, well, they'd have the exclusive rights to it. Elvis's manager led him to believe that he could get him out of the draft, when this was just a straight-up lie. And Elvis was well upset to find out that he'd have to disrupt his career, but his manager promised him that it would be very good for him, which are the famous last words, aren't they? His joining of the army had to be deferred because he was starring in the film King Creole. The plan was for this appearance to keep him in the public mind whilst he was away, and he was accused of favouritism for being allowed to have this deferment, but in practice it would have been allowed for anybody who got a similar work commitment. Elvis reported for duty on this day in 1958, a day that was dubbed Black Monday by his fans. Parents, though, they were delighted to see this hip-shaking delinquent finally go and do some hard work. News crews filmed as he boarded the bus to go to Fort Chaffee in Arkansas, and it was here that he completed his basic training and expressed his enjoyment of the rough and tumble publicly. But privately, he struggled and he'd break down on phone calls home. After basic, he was allowed to live off-site with his grandma, his friend Lamar Fike, and some of the other soldiers. In August 1958, Elvis's beloved mother Gladys suddenly fell ill. She'd been struggling with him being away and she'd begun to drink more. She'd also been abusing diet pills. She collapsed one day during a heated argument with her husband Vernon, and Elvis was called to return home. He was initially denied the leave, but when he threatened to go AWOL, they allowed it. On the 14th of August 1958, Gladys Presley died of a heart attack and liver cirrhosis, and Elvis never really recovered from it. He collapsed several times during her funeral, and he had to return to the military just a few days later, and then a month after that, he got sent to West Germany, where the US had got a base. It must have been so hard for him. He lived in a nice hotel off base, and he drove trucks. It wasn't too bad. But it was in West Germany that he was introduced to 3 of his lifelong loves: amphetamines, karate, and a 14-year-old girl called Priscilla Bewley. Despite already having a girlfriend back home, Elvis pursued Priscilla, and her family made some questionable safeguarding decisions. But they were ultimately married in 1967 when she was 19 and he was 32. Presley never really stopped the amphetamines. He was practically evangelical about their benefits, and whilst he was in the army, he donated his pay to charity. He was very generous to his fellow soldiers. He recorded a few songs at the request of the label whilst he was away, and he got promoted to sergeant in 1960. But Elvis was right to have been worried about the effects that military service would have had on his career. He returned to making music when he got home, but his grief and his drug addiction made him reclusive. He stopped touring for 8 years. In 1969, he returned to the scene with a residency in Las Vegas, but his performances, they lacked his previous energy, and thus we entered into what is known as the mature Elvis phase, which is a nice way of saying fat Elvis. He died of an heart attack at 42, and it does make you question what it was all for, doesn't it, really? Like, I don't think anyone comes out of this looking good. They should have just left everybody to get on with it, shouldn't they? But anyway, thank you for watching. Why not subscribe? And I'll see you tomorrow.